I wanted to say a few words about failure today. Obviously, in entrepreneurial circles, but also in careers, failure is something that everybody needs to deal with. And I think there's quite a bit of bad approaches to thinking about failure, especially in entrepreneurial space. And today, I wanted to touch on three different ways that you can handle failure, one of which I think is the most productive. So let's jump into it. All right, so the first way here is this way that's most common in entrepreneurial circles, and it's this kind of like, you know, call it the, who cares method or the who cares way of failing. And it's epitomized by this like fail fast and move on approach to failure. And this one I think is bad because it minimizes the failure and it almost separates you from that failure. It doesn't acknowledge the fact that something about the world that you believed or understood was wrong. You had the wrong approach. You did something that people didn't want or in a way that didn't work. And you need to acknowledge that. And when you think about this like fail fast thing, we almost like think of it as like, yeah, we just got to get these failures out of the way before we're successful. But the truth is that each of those failures is representing something that you didn't have right. And stopping and understanding that is a valuable thing. But this fail fast approach doesn't let you do that. So that's not a good approach to take. This other one here, I'll flip over to this other side, is um, is kind of like, you know, failure as total disaster. This is also not a productive way to think about failure. This is the one where you do the opposite of the first one, where you completely internalize that failure as being a representation of you, that you're the failure and not the thing you did or the approach you took being the failure. And this is potentially even more toxic because it can stop you in your tracks and prevent you from moving forward. And I think it is a common thing for a lot of first-time entrepreneurs and people that are new to it that failure can be a shock. It's like that first test you failed at school. It hits you pretty hard, and if you're not careful in this space, you can often get pretty down on yourself, and that can spiral into worse places. If you have a tendency to be on the more depressive side of temperament, this is a dangerous place to be, and it's probably a place that you'll tend towards, but it's not a productive place to be because it doesn't actually help you move on or grow from it. And so that brings us to this this third approach, which is basically like one where you're kind of compassionately thinking about this failure and you're acknowledging it and you're open to learning from it. And this is the best way to approach failure because you're not ignoring it in any way. You're saying, there's something I didn't know, I did something wrong, um, and I need to learn from that. But you're also saying, I can learn from that and I'm going to learn from that. And this doesn't mean that I'm a failure, it just means that I need to think about things a little bit differently. And what's interesting in this moment here, when you think about like these two little characters, and this is why I drew them as little figures, because at any moment here in each of these scenarios, you're both of those people. You're the person that has failed, but you're also the person, you know, that is now responsible for making the next step. And in this situation here, you are both the person that has failed and you're the person that's being compassionate for that to that person. Um, and thinking of yourself as both of those at the same time, I think, is a really useful thing. And so, um, to kind of have duality in that moment, I think, is really helpful. And if you do think of yourself as those two people, you're less likely to be in this situation here where you're feeling like that failure and that is you going forward. So I really like this way of thinking about failure, where you're both the person that has failed, but you're also the person moving on. And I really think it's important to acknowledge that you did make a mistake, but also to acknowledge that you can learn from that mistake and do better on the next time around. So anyway, that's a one way to look at failure. And if you're struggling with that or you have struggled with it, hopefully that's something that helps you along. Anyway, that's it. See ya.